Welcome, everybody, to the first presidential H3 podcast, sponsored by Honey and Quip. Today, our guest is Andrew Yang, who is running as the Democratic presidential candidate. Did I say that right?
Yeah, that's like, spot on.
Yeah, good. Because I don't want to, you're running to be the candidate. It's a whole thing.
If you get my intro wrong, then by presidential decree, I will. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Guys, if you hear anything you like here today with Andrew, head on over to yang2020.com to donate and help support the campaign. And I want to get this out of the way. I have one thing that I really want to ask you first is what makes you think you can be president if you don't even wear a tie?
Well, I didn't wear a tie on the debate. I don't wear a tie on the trail very much. I think America is ready for a different kind of president who's more about substance than form. And not wearing a tie is sort of an emblem of the fact that I'm not a politician. I'm not someone who's been rattling around Washington for years or decades. And unfortunately, most Americans don't think that career politicians are going to solve our problems. It's one reason I'm running for president.
So that's a great answer, by the way. It is a conscious choice not to wear the tie.
Yeah, I mean, I've worn a tie in the past.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy it. I actually went to a snooty.
The tie is awful. I hate the tie.
It's not great. I went to a prep school as a kid that had you wear a tie all the time, too. Oh. So that does not, let's say, engender positive associations.
So you have no experience in holding political office. You went straight from being a CEO, right, to running for president. Does it make sense that you went straight, it makes sense maybe to become a mayor or governor or senator first? Why did you decide to go straight to the presidency?
The main reason is that I'm running to try and solve the biggest problems of our time. And I think those problems are accelerating and getting more and more serious. So I genuinely didn't think I had 5 to 10 years of climbing the ladder to wait to address some of these problems. To me, the reason why Donald Trump's our president is that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri. And those automation trends are just picking up steam as we close 30% of America's stores and malls because of Amazon. Self-driving cars and trucks are around the corner, and driving a truck is the most common job in 29 states. So if I bided my time and was like, I'm going to run for mayor, and then maybe eventually I'll start trying to make this case, it's like we just don't have time for that shit. Truthfully, I didn't have time for that shit. The country doesn't have time for that shit. So decided to run for president out of the gate. And one of the things I'd say to people is, look, I'm not some asshole who says, I'm going to run the government like a business, because they're very, very different things. You need very different leadership skills, and it's a different operating model. I've been the CEO of a business, and when you're the CEO, if you tell someone to do something, they kind of have to do it because you're their boss and you're paying them, and if they don't do it, then you'll probably end up making a change. But in government, you can't pull that off. You can't be like, hey, Mitch McConnell, do what I say, or he doesn't care. It's like they've got a different set of motivation. So you have to do something that's much closer to what I did as the head of a nonprofit for the last 7 years, which is you have a vision and then you try and galvanize energy and consensus around that vision. And that's something I can do, and I'll be very glad to do it as our president.
You say, and I agree with you, that the reason Trump was elected is mainly due to the fact that we're actually losing jobs, leaking out to automation. But I think the people that voted for him are not necessarily aware of that. They're talking about immigration, and they're talking about China and stuff like this. How do you convince these people who have been kind of being fed propaganda for so long that the issue isn't immigrants or China or whatever else? It's that their jobs are being automated away. Because and another issue I see is conservatives tend to be, or Republicans tend to be, the party of anti-give outs, right? Anti-welfare. So how do we convince conservatives that the problem is not what they think, and also how do we convince them to be okay taking these handouts when it seems like this is kind of like a naughty word in conservative circles?
Well, I'm happy to say that when I presented this case to literally thousands of Americans around the country, a light bulb goes off where you say, look, it's technology and automation. I'll describe my conversations with truck drivers. 2 years ago, if you said, hey, trucks are going to start driving themselves in a number of years, they would look at you and say, there is no way a robot could ever do my job.
Right.
And then that turned this past year, and
Yeah.
now the conversation is we have to make robot trucks illegal.
Oh, really?
It's a very, very different convo.
They're lobbying for that, huh?
And when you go to people and say, look, it's not immigrants, it's technology, I have never had any group of people stand up and say, it's not robots, it's immigrants. As soon as you say it's not immigrants, it's robots, they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. Like, they're just kind of waiting for you to say it.
But I
It's so
wonder.
true. I feel like I've experienced it myself when I heard you talk when you were on the Rogan podcast. It's all of a sudden clicked to me. Like,
Oh, thank you.
it's right here. It's already happening.
Oh, it's happening. And then, too, like, all they have to do is look up. Like, they see the grocery stores with the self-checkout. They see the fast
Yeah.
food with, like, the screens to touch. They see the airports that used to have clerks and now they don't. So they can see it all. And so when you point it out to them, they say, oh, yeah, that's right. To the second point, you say, look, conservatives don't like quote-unquote handouts. There's one state that's had a dividend for almost 40 years, and it's Alaska. It's a deep red Republican state as a Republican governor. It's one reason why we named this the freedom dividend, is because it tested better with conservatives with the word freedom in it.
Yeah,
but but it's also a dividend on our shared progress as a country. And I had someone in the Midwest say, like, as soon as you made me think, wait a minute, companies do this for their shareholders at the time, we can do this. So this is not really a left or right thing. It's bipartisan. What conservatives hate is they hate giant bureaucracies making people's decisions for them. But they don't mind the idea of people getting economic independence and autonomy to do what they want, particularly if it seems fair like it does in Alaska.
What's your message to people like me and most and a growing number of people who just feel disengaged because it feels just impossible to actually understand what's going on? Even when you invest your time, you still don't understand what's going on. So what do we do?
First, whatever sense of unease you have is probably the least of it. Like, things are worse and shittier than even most people believe, in my experience. Like, the institutions are just so corrupt and weak, and the people involved are just so checked out and jaded. Washington, D.C. is not a great place. I have friends who've worked on Capitol Hill, and they went in with the best of intentions, and then 10 years later, they're just totally defeated.
Wow.
Like, it's not a good look. So first, I just want to verify everyone's sense of of despair. Like, the despair is well-founded. Now, as to what we can do about it, it's going to take a campaign like mine that's an outsider campaign, a non-politician, completely funded by the people, $26 a pop, actually shaking things up and saying, look, we can do things differently. And after I become president, we can transform right now, like, the polarization and the gridlock, because everyone senses that I'm non-ideological. I'm just trying to solve the problems. I'm just trying to do it for the people. And then hopefully we can change the culture. Now, it's a very tall order. It's going to be very, very difficult. But I think we can do it if enough of us get together and say, look, we're sick and tired of politics as usual, and we're willing to take a chance on the Asian man who wants to give everyone money.
I feel like also with the way that you are running, it's pointing out, at least to me, the feeling that I get is how most of us really can agree on a lot of things, no matter on which side you are. And I think that's what it's going to take, because you need to be able to convince people who voted for Trump. And pointing out that there's so much wrong that we all need for all of us is the way for me to do it. And I see it with the way you're running.
You know, I'm happy to say I'm one of only 2 candidates, along with Bernie Sanders, that over 10% of Trump voters said they would vote for. And so with that, that's enough to win. If I become the nominee, I win this election. Easy.
You know what? Like, if we keep going into the future, 50 years, 100 years, man, how many jobs are left, right?
Well, this is the fundamental reinvention that's in many ways at the heart of my campaign. So right now, our economy revolves around these ideas of capital efficiency, where the market says, if you're an accountant, you're worth 75,000. If you're a truck driver, you're worth 46,000. And what I'm saying right now is, look, technology is going to come that's going to do the job of the accountant and the truck driver. And then what is their new market worth going to be? Not what it was, it's sort of unclear what the new value is. So we're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in human history. And we need to start finding new pursuits and jobs and ways to value our own time. And one of the examples I use, that my wife is at home with our 2 boys, one of whom has autism, and the market values her work at 0. And there are millions of women around the country in the same boat where we're like, your time's worth 0. And we all know that the work she's doing is some of the hardest and most important work that anyone does. Yeah, you have a 2-month-old. You're like, holy crap, this is the hardest job I've ever to do.
That's the issue with capitalism, though, right? Because they don't produce like tangible, they don't right produce to the economy in a touchable way, right? It's an intangible asset.
And so in a way, we have to transform what we think of as tangible value. So if you make another human being stronger and healthier, that's
good.
Immensely valuable.
Yeah.
It's just right now our economic statistics don't value that appropriately.
Or investing in and having a happy, healthy family is good for society.
Yes. And so this is the great opportunity in an age where technology is going to end up assuming more and more work, is that we have to rethink and broaden what we think of as work. And then we have to come up with different and better and more human ways of valuing our own time. Because if we play out the capital efficiency race, we lose like at an epic level. I joke, but it's true. I was an unhappy corporate attorney for 5 whole months, and I can guarantee you can automate that job away. You know what I mean? like this isn't just like the warehouse shelver. Like this is the lawyers, the accountants, the radiologists. Like it just goes on the list. So we have to take this chance to evolve and start thinking more deeply about, okay, what is the work we want to do? What is valuable in our lives? How do we reward and incentivize the work that we need more of for ourselves? And so I have some big ideas on this. The $1,000 a month is not the solution. It's a foundation. It's like the floor on which you can start building. But it gives us a chance. It gets the boot off of people's throats, and it gives us a chance to start measuring our economic progress in things that would actually matter to us, like our health and well-being, our mental health and freedom from substance abuse, how our kids are doing, how clean our air and water is, like whether we enjoy the work we're doing, things that might actually get us excited.
One of the jokes that currently seem like a privilege, to someone who's just busy surviving.
Yes. But one of the jokes I tell is how many people get excited about GDP when they wake up in the morning? They're like, I'm going to make a big contribution. So if you were to say, how many of you get excited if you were to make your community stronger, mentally healthier? People would be like, that would be tremendous. It's just most people don't have the opportunity to do that kind of work. So this is the big chance we have, and we have to take it, because if we stay on this road too long, GDP and capital efficiency are going to send us flying off a cliff. And one of the things I say to people is like, look, self-driving trucks will be great for GDP. You're going to save tens of billions of dollars. It's going to be terrible for the 3.5 million truck drivers and the 7 million Americans who work in truck stops, motels, and diners around the country waiting for the truckers to get out and have a meal. So you guys run a business, and so you have measurements you look at all the time. It's around like how engaged viewers are, like how many people are clicking on things. We need the right measurements for our society. We made up GDP almost 100 years ago, and even the inventor said this is a terrible measurement of national well-being and we should never use it as that. That was 100 years ago.
Right.
And so here we are just still following it 100 years later, being like, GDP is going to tell us how we're doing. We need to evolve.
Do you have an idea for what that new metric might look like? I mean, what is it?
Yes, I do. So I call it the American scorecard, and it keeps GDP as one data point, but it integrates health and life expectancy, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, childhood education and success rates, environmental quality. And we have numbers for these things. And so we can integrate them into our economic measurements. And then at the State of the Union every year as president, I will actually present the scorecard and say, as an example, 8 Americans are dying of drug overdoses every hour. That's terrible and unconscionable. So we're going to get that down by 50% over the next few years, and here's how we're going to do it. And then if individuals or companies or organizations put resources to work to move society in that direction, then they actually get rewarded economically. Because right now the problem is that all the economic rewards cut in this direction, and then all of the helping people rewards cut the other direction.
Right.
Speaking of Trump, if you're on the debate stage, one-on-one versus Trump, he has a specific debating style, as everyone knows, of almost the cadence of a high school bully, the name calling, the degrading, but he's a very fierce debater and very successful debater too. I think that creates quite a spectacle. Do you have a strategy going one-on-one? If you were to get the Democratic nominee, how would you confront Trump on a one-on-one debate?
A Trump voter in the Midwest said to me that he can't wait for me to debate Donald Trump because he thinks that I would crush him. And the reason why he said this is that whereas Donald Trump's all bluster and spectacle, you're all facts and logic. I'm like ice to his fire.
Right.
And so one of the jokes, I was trying to imitate Trump, and I was like, Comrade Yang, go back to China, or something like that. And then, like it would just.
Comrade Gang, that's pretty good nickname.
Yeah, that's what we came up with as his nickname for me, because it's like a little racist and tries to make light of the socialist thing.
Right.
And when I say it, in other contexts, it's like it's not socialism, it's capitalism where income doesn't start at zero. But in a debate with Trump, it would just seem so ridiculous because I would just be there talking the facts, saying, look, here are the real problems. And some of the problems he called out and got a lot of credit for that. But I have real solutions, and people can pick up on that very, very quickly, where he's like, we're going to bring the jobs back, we're going to build a wall. It's like, I'm going to distribute the bounty and give you $1,000 a month. And I agree the problems are real.
Right.
The Democrats' response in the last cycle, he was like, we're going to bring the jobs back, we're going to build a wall, we're going to make America great again. And then the Democratic response was, America's already great.
Right.
And that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying
we have big trouble.
We have real problems, and we need to solve them as fast as possible. And one way to do it is by giving people a dividend of $1,000 a month to be a game changer for millions of families. So people can see through the bluster, and even a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump are tired of it.
Can you explain what universal basic income is for those people who don't know? Yeah.
Universal basic income is a policy where everyone in a society, in this case every U.S. citizen, gets a certain amount of money to meet your basic needs, no questions asked. So my proposal of freedom dividend would be $1,000 a month in the hands of every American adult starting at age 18 until the day you die, $12,000 a year. And this seems dramatic, but this has actually been proposed and almost passed in America any number of times over the years. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of the country. Martin Luther King was fighting for it 1967 when he was assassinated in 1968. Milton Friedman and 1,000 economists endorsed it in the 70s. It passed the U.S. House of Representatives and the Congress twice in 71, so it came this close to being law. Yeah.
Wow.
What was the amount they were prepared to give out then?
It was about $12,000 a head.
Wow.
Yeah. And they even ran studies. If you can imagine a government that was so functional that they actually just started giving money to Americans just to see what would happen. The U.S. government did that in the 60s. They started giving people money and be like, oh, what's going on? And the data was very, very promising.
They did that?
Yeah, they did that.
What'd they do?
They picked random groups of Americans in New Jersey and Colorado and other parts of the country, just started giving them cash and then following them around to see what happened.
Really?
That's so interesting.
Yeah, can you
Did
imagine
other
a functional
Americans know
government
about
doing
that?
Yeah. I mean, this was
It's like a lottery?
this was all the rage in the sense that everyone thought this was a good idea. Again, 1,000 economists signed a study saying this would be great for America if we just guaranteed a certain amount of money for every American. We just passed Social Security. We just passed Medicare. And so the American people were looking around being like, hey, like maybe we can do some other great stuff. And Martin Luther King was saying like, we should do this. And then it was endorsed by a lot of people. And then it passed the U.S. House of Representatives. So during that time, Congress, when they were looking to pass it, they said, well, we should just give people money to see what happens.
And you said the results were good.
The results were really good.
So what happened?
So it passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice, and then it got stalled in the Senate because Democrats in the Senate wanted an even higher income threshold. I shit you not. And someone who worked in Democratic politics at that time said it was the biggest mistake we ever made. We should just sign that.
Oh my God.
and then the moment was lost, and then Nixon gets impeached, and then like the pendulum swings. You wind up with Reagan, and then the whole moment was lost. But it just gives you a sense of how mainstream this idea was, how it came this close to being law. It became a law in Alaska, and not that long afterwards in the early '80s. And so it's not like a far out idea, and that's one of the things that frustrates me is that now, I'm like the quote unquote futurist presidential candidate being like, oh, crazy $1,000 a month. It's like, this was mainstream American political wisdom in the 60s and 70s. What the hell happened to us where now we think it's nuts? Like,
Right.
it's like,
Well, now we need it even more than we did then,
Yes.
right?
yes, now we actually
Now
need
it's
it.
a necessity.
And when you start thinking about it for a minute, like, it becomes common sense. But like, it gets caricatured in various ways, even though it actually, again, is like a deeply American and mainstream idea. And now, like, Barack Obama came out and said we should talk about it. Elon Musk and like Zuckerberg and others are like, we should totally do it. Like, it's actually, in many ways, this conversation is definitely overdue. In my opinion, this should have been passed years ago.
Certainly an exciting time where your campaign is growing. It's resonating. I mean, what an exciting thing it would be for the United States.
Well, yeah, anyone watching this or listening to it, you can become part of the Yang Gang. It's a very cheap gang to join.
Yeah,
It's very
the cheapest
wholesome.
gang around.
The cheapest gang around. If you gave $27, you'd be an above average member of the gang.
Think of it as an investment. I think this is a misconception that a lot of people have, or at least an opinion. The intention of universal basic income is not to enable people not to work.
Yeah,
is it?
exactly. Knock on wood.
Right.
That's right.
Right. I mean, because $1,000 a month, first of all, not enough money for most people. And second of all, I think that a lot of people derive purpose in their life from their work. So, in 50 years when there's no jobs, or let's say 10 years, someone can't find a job, they're getting $1,000 a month. What do you do when that's not enough?
So, first, could not agree more that one of the biggest misconceptions is that universal basic income or the freedom dividend is somehow going to reduce work. Because, number one, it recognizes a lot of the work that we're already doing that does not get recognized. And it would be an enormous catalyst to entrepreneurship, arts, creativity, nurturing, caregiving, all these things we kind of want to do that the market says it's not worth enough for you to make a living at it, so don't do it. So it would create and recognize and reward a lot of the work that we're trying to do, is number one. Number two, if you imagine what $12,000 a year would mean in a town of, let's call it 100,000 adults, you're talking about another $12 million like a month that's coming through that town. And so that doesn't just help the individuals, that supercharges the local businesses, it supercharges the local nonprofits, it supercharges the volunteer organizations. And so when you say what do the jobs of the future look like, it could be that 20 years from now, it's very normal to work in a job that just helps make other people stronger, healthier, mentally healthier, helps clean our environment. Things that right now there's no market demand for. There could actually be massive opportunities in. The problem right now is that, again, we're following capital efficiency, and it says these things are worth zero.
Right.
So the big change we have to make is if we change the measurements and say these things are actually worth like a lot,
Yeah.
then that's
All of
the
a sudden, those are good jobs to have.
Yeah.
right. It's just right now those are not good jobs to have because
Because there's no money.
yeah, they pay shitty and like, no one respects you, and it's like if you do that, just be like, so that's like the evolution we have to make. And it's more achievable than people think. I mean, the first step's just get some money into people's hands. And the great thing is you put money into people's hands, that's going to supercharge the kind of work that people want to do, because people would choose to then start a new organization, start businesses, donate to their local local org.
But I'm wondering, we've talked about the VAT tax. Does that pay for the whole thing? Would this increase taxes on middle or lower class people?
It increases the purchasing power of 94% of Americans. You're like, one of the jokes is like, why did the bank robber rob the bank? Because that's where the money is. We got to go to where the money is, and the money's not in like the hands of like the average workaday American.
So,
but the great thing is, here are the other ways we get the money. So number one, get a slice of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad. Does that cover the whole thing? No. But here's the magic. Number two, money in our hands ends up growing our economy by 10 to 12%, and we get $400 billion in new tax revenue because of all the additional money is getting spent. Number three, if you get the boot off of Americans' throats, you end up making us healthier, better educated, mentally healthier. And one study said that just alleviating gross poverty would increase our GDP by $700 billion just based on better education and health outcomes. And that's it. Like, not more businesses started, none of that stuff. It's just health and education. And then number four, we'd save hundreds of billions on things like incarceration, homelessness services, emergency room healthcare.
Right.
We're spending over $1 trillion on that stuff now.
that's true.
Yeah.
And there was a corrections officer in New Hampshire who said to me flat out, he said, we should pay people to stay out of jail.
That's what you want to do.
Because he sees that when they're in jail, we spend so much
Yeah.
money. This is a prison guard making this case to me. So if he sees it, we try and say like, oh, we're saving money by not spending money on ourselves. We just end up spending the money in more expensive and dark and punitive ways anyway.
Yeah.
So you invested in ourselves in the trickle-up economy, then you end up saving yourself tons of money.
So in short, you are not raising taxes on middle and lower classmen.
Oh, no. The goal is to get more purchasing power into our hands. Because right now, the middle class is getting eroded very, very quickly. And that's not where the money is. Then we got to go where the money is.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think space is a worthwhile investment?
I do think space is a worthwhile investment. I'm kind of sad that we're past the days of NASA being like, mission to Mars, like all the 60s movies, like watching all the now all that talent's working for SpaceX or
So
Jeff.
What's your argument in favor of exploring space, colonizing Mars or the moon, in the face of such great challenges here on Earth?
So let me be clear. If I had a choice between fixing our problems here on Earth and making it so that we could get
the hell out of here.
Or get like, I would obviously choose solving problems on Earth and just much, much higher return. There are many more of us here where it's our natural habitat. I think that space exploration is a worthy endeavor because it tends to push the frontier of human, not just knowledge, but also capacities. There are many innovations that stem from us having to try and solve such advanced technical problems as trying to get our people to, let's call it Mars, and being able to live there. So to me, most real innovations happen at the frontier level. And so if we can try and push ourselves in that direction, it's positive. But if you look at the order of magnitude of both the problems and the value generated, if you have a choice, then you obviously have to try and, let's say, fix climate change here on Earth, or keep it so that we're actually able to feed ourselves in healthier ways. So, I'm very much like
Certainly
an
can
Earthling.
do both too.
Yeah, like we should be able to do both.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm kind of geeky. I mean, you can't be like,
Yeah,
I mean, we gotta keep trying to push the envelope.
There's some intangible value to the dream of us as an exploring species.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. I want you to be covered, and I actually think you've got a shot. I really do.
Thank you.
You're on a trajectory. The last debate, you cut through the bullshit masterfully, eloquently, and I very much look forward to seeing you on that stage again. And I think you really do have a shot because like AI, we're not going to be seeing linear growth here.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Guys, if you want to support the campaign, yang2020.com. You can donate. Think of it as an investment, guys. Huge returns.
Huge returns.
Good luck on
Thank you
everything,
both so much.
and looking forward to it, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And congratulations on the growing family.
Thank
Thank you.
Great
Thank you very much.
Thank you.